Hi, I'm Rachel Abbott, and welcome back to the Standard Podcast. Since the beginning of the war in Ukraine, millions of children have had their education disrupted. Many attend makeshift underground education centres with limited access to technology. Most of the centres are lined with war safety posters, a stark reminder of the danger they are still facing 3 years on. To mark the third anniversary of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, I'm now joined by Sarah Brown, global education campaigner and chair of the charity TheirWorld. Founded more than 20 years ago, TheirWorld is best known for supporting children and education in conflict areas, and is sending hundreds of laptops to Ukrainian students. Sarah has been working at Ukrainian President Zelensky's request directly with the Ministry of Education and Science of Ukraine, as well as First Lady Olena Zelenska's foundation. Sarah, would you be able to explain in more detail how TheirWorld has been supporting children and education during this crisis?
From the moment we heard of the Russian invasion into Ukraine, TheirWorld wanted to do something, wanted to act. We've worked in other places where children have, moved and been affected by conflict, where they've had to go and start their learning in another country. We worked in Lebanon with Syrian refugees. We worked in the Greek islands when refugees were coming in onto the beaches. We have, young people around the world who campaign for education and really care passionately about it. So right from the beginning, we wanted to do something, talk to local partners on the ground, realized you had families who were on the move, parents going off to join the military and go to the front line, some families trying to stay close to that, others, needing to flee. And what we did was we mobilized laptops. In the first wave, we've mobilized now 70,000 laptops that have gone to Ukrainian children who've been displaced either within Ukraine or in host countries outside, like Poland or Moldova, or even some in the UK. Those laptops we made sure had software on it, the right learning materials. We had them donated by HP. We had the software donated by Microsoft. We had a Ukrainian language group, Smartos Vita, contribute learning materials. So it was lots of different groups and people all kind of coming together. And there was such a positive effort to try and help this situation. And that was huge at the start, but hasn't really faded away. Everyone's maintained their involvement. So all those laptops have gone out to those children. And, we're at the third anniversary now, which I don't think any of us could have anticipated it would go on for quite so long. And what we've done is we've had 500 laptops that are going out to learning centres and learning shelters, really, where children can go safely away, safe from air attacks and those sort of things, some of them quite close to the front line. It's for those older children who are now sitting there, what they call a national multi-subject test, which is equivalent of RA levels or IB, so that they can then have the qualifications so that they can go on to higher education, to university. So we're just keeping every dream and hope alive for those children. But also there's quite a wish from those young people to want to go and get the skills, because their dream now is to go back and rebuild their country. If the leaders having these talks now can come to some sort of agreement with a peace, there's still a lot to do for children after that, but also they're going to be the people in the future who rebuild Ukraine.
With the ongoing conflict, and you mentioned education shelters there, could you tell us more about them? What is the current state of schooling in Ukraine? Are children still facing major disruptions?
So with the conflict, where you've got the front line, you've got schools that have obviously had to close down. They're not safe. There is no normal life. So the laptops that we're sending out now, some of them are going to where they've got underground learning centres, shelters, places that are safer. And obviously it's nicer for children not just to be isolated in their own homes. I think we learned that in the pandemic, that they can actually go and be with others, be with an educator. And those laptops are really important for them to be able to get their lessons, be able to complete their learning exercises and even sit those tests. These are the exam centres now too. But across Ukraine, you've also got schools that are keeping going, but they can have days that are more dangerous than others, where they close, they open again. They've got children coming from another part of the country in who are temporarily there. Like, everything's in flux. And throughout the whole of the war, everyone's had to be really quite flexible. And I think, we've seen this in London, where we've had Ukrainian families come in, they've stayed with other families, they've been able to join in at schools. That's Ukraine everywhere, all the time, of families moving, helping each other, being able to go to school. So nothing's ever kind of safe and settled at the moment until this war ends, although there can be moments of you can have quite long periods of normality in some parts of the country. But it's, having that flexibility. And that's what I think TheirWorld and building local partners to actually say, what can we do that's really useful, has been the laptops, the learning materials, the software, getting it out, making sure we can be flexible about getting it there, making sure there's, all the materials are loaded up, because if ever they're losing, can't download things all the time, signals go on and off. So, flexibility is the name of the game here.
Let's go to a break. Coming up in part 2.
We're definitely seeing a time when across the board, world leaders are stepping up into a space that says we need to start looking at what a peacetime looks like. And everyone's got their different view and their different approach. But what I'm hoping is that whichever world leaders are talking to each other in their rooms, is that they're listening to each other as much as they're talking. Everyone's got their own point of view, but they're going to have to find that middle point.
Welcome back. Sarah, what feedback have you had from teachers or some of the children?
Yeah, we hear a lot from, we've been talking just this week to young people, their parents, their teachers. Actually, the feedback we're getting is what's good for them is to being able to actually go to somewhere that the parents feel is safer because it's a protected shelter, that they're actually able to be with other young people and not just isolated, that there's a teacher who can actually be present, or can, if for specialist subjects, because with older children, no one teacher is going to be an expert in every subject that they're learning at that level, but they're able to get some of those lessons online as well. And what's interesting is also the appetite for learning. I know we all sort of grumble and moan when we're at school, when we've got to do too many tests and, sit behind a desk for too long. But I think for these children whose lives have been so disrupted, school is a really good way of investing in your future. It's, more dynamic than thinking about the, what's going on that particular day.
Earlier on, you mentioned the senior students. For them, what are the long-term goals of these initiatives?
Yeah, I think for older children, they've been keeping going the last 3 years with their lessons and learning. They've moved the exams so that you can actually sit them online. So wherever you are, if you can get to one of these learning centres, they can set up the moment for, be able to take the exam. But, I visited Kyiv about 18 months ago. I was able to meet with President Zelensky, meet with the First Lady of Ukraine, whose foundation has been a key partner for us. And the messaging they have is to really focus on children all the way through. Those youngest children, keep them going, so that everything that's about the future, no one's got too much missing. So, the little ones are ready for the start of school, the ones in the middle are able to keep learning. And for these older ones, it's quite critical because they might not be able to go to university immediately unless they were actually going to leave and go to another part of the country. But they need to lock down that exam. It's the absolute ticket for them to get to the university. And for Ukraine, what I found when I went there is there's such a resilience amongst people. You walk around the city of Kyiv, not too much walking around, but the short walk that I took from, one protected place to another, there's sandbags everywhere. There's all the kind of wiring in the sky to protect against drones coming in. They have these very moving pictures of the fallen soldiers so they can pay their respects to them. There's a war. When I arrived in the morning, there were sirens finishing and people coming out of bunkers because they'd all had to kind of rush in there. And yet they all came out and got on with their day. And I think that's been the attitude through this war with whatever they're facing, that you're focused on what the future is. So for young people sitting their exams now, that's so they can go and be the engineers, the doctors, the teachers, all the skills you're going to need in those cities if you can get a peacetime and you start to rebuild. So it's the physical rebuilding of, whatever's been bombed and knocked down, but also making sure this, cities are working, roads are working, everything can get back to good working order. And people are going to need different skills for that.
In terms of a peace deal, what are you hoping for?
Keir Starmer is travelling to meet with President Trump in America. President Macron's also going for France. We've got the EU leaders who are actually meeting today, and focused in Kyiv. We're definitely seeing a time when across the board, world leaders are stepping up into a space that says we need to start looking at what a peacetime looks like. And everyone's got their different view and their different approach. But what I'm hoping is that whichever world leaders are talking to each other in their rooms, is that they're listening to each other as much as they're talking. Everyone's got their own point of view, but they're going to have to find that middle point and work out what it is. And the other thing we can't forget is that Ukraine didn't choose this war. didn't choose the invasion. This is a people who've had that happen to them. And, the UK has stepped up with its allyship, as has the EU. America has been an ally through it. And somehow we need to make sure that the Ukrainian people who were invaded do get to kind of get their country back and be able to resume their lives. I'm sure there's a lot of high-level talking that will need to go on before they ever reach that point. And in the meantime, children are affected by this. They're affected every single day, and not in a good way. And we can all do our best to keep their schooling going and their hopes and dreams alive. But we need these leaders to come to some sort of decision so their lives can go back to, normal.
And that's The Standard. For all the latest news, head to standard.co.uk. And if you'd like to get in touch with us, drop us a line at podcasts@standard.co.uk. This podcast returns tomorrow. We'll see you then.